Hey, do you mind taking number 2 in our committee?
I will do that. I kind of figured that.
Cool. And it looks like we're live out in the world of YouTube right now.
Yeah.
Small miracles.
Jen's on, Steve's on, Carolyn Shoemaker.
Jim Marino,
Jim Marino.
not out there yet. Should I text him just to make sure he's got the time?
Yeah, that would be great, Commissioner Sweeney, if you could.
Okay.
And Nicole, I am seeing us live just as a
Thank you for confirming.
information.
Always good to know. No. So Chairman, it does look like we are still waiting for Commissioner Marino. It looks like Commissioner Sweeney has reached out to him, and we are recording and we are live on YouTube. We do have one unknown call-in user, so I'm not sure if they'll be here for public comment or not, but when the time comes, you can certainly ask him.
Mr. Marino's not on, is he?
He is not on yet, no, sir.
Yeah, I don't have a response by text yet.
It's 3 o'clock, gentlemen, let's go to work. Let's call the work session of the Isabella County Board of Commissioners to order. Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation,
Under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Todd. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Green,
Here.
Commissioner Engler,
Here.
Commissioner Jalazinski,
Here?
Commissioner Horton,
Here.
Commissioner Marino, Commissioner Sweeney,
Here,
Commissioner Hope.
Here.
All present except for Commissioner Marino.
Thank you. Item number 3 is approval of the agenda. This afternoon, we have 2 presentations and special reports. Item number 4, there's no appointments to boards and commissioners or commissions. Brings us down to committee reports, finance and administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance and Administration Committee is all set.
Thank you. The Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Mr. Chairman, the Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee is all set.
Thank you. Item C is the Human Resource and Public Works Committee.
Mr. Chairman, Human Resources and Public Works Committee is all set.
Thank you. Item D, Intergovernmental Affairs. Tobin, is there anything for this afternoon's discussion?
Not today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Item E is Administrator Controller. Nicole, is there anything that you want to add in there?
No, sir, not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. There's no unfinished business. Under new business, we have 2 items. And then there's no general public comment announcements, and then we have a closed session at the end. A motion's in order to approve the agenda as presented.
So move Jelazinski.
Horton support.
Been moved and supported to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? We have an agenda. Item number 4 is general public comment. Nicole, is there anybody that's waiting to comment?
Chairman, we do have an unknown caller that is muted. If the caller would like to speak at public comment, this is the time they would press *9 on their telephone keypad to raise their hand. I do not see any hands raised, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So at this present time, there's no one for general public comment.
That is correct.
Let's move on then to presentations and special reports. Item A is a Administrative Controller Nicole F. Frost, Deputy, to present the fiscal year 2021 recommended budget. Nicole, enjoy yourself on this. Worked a long, hard time on it.
Yes, sir, I have, as have a lot of people, not the least of which is to the right of me on my screen, which I'm sure it's not the same on yours, Accountant Twist. And she doesn't have her photo up right now, but certainly Jessica Drosowitz also had a big impact on bringing this forward. Couldn't have done it without you, so thank you both, Melissa and Jessica. All right, first thing I'm going to do is try to share my screen so that you don't have to look at me. You can look at some fantastic, powerful slides. So I just want to confirm that you can see my PowerPoint slide. You've got it. Excellent. Now, I'll be sharing my screen to show you each of the slides, but you should be able to control those tiles up in the corner with attendee videos and move them or minimize them to your own satisfaction. So whatever you prefer. We tried to create the slides so that they wouldn't be covered up by those, but you can move them as you see.
I'm sure you'll do just fine with this thing. We'll learn as we go.
Well, it's funny you say that because this is the first time that this has been done on Zoom, so really none of us know.
We'll have fun.
Yes, sir. As Chairman stated, I am Nicole Frost, the Deputy Administrator Controller for Isabella County, and I am presenting to you the fiscal year 21 recommended budget. If you have a question as we go through this, please don't be afraid to use the raise your hand function. Jessica hopefully can let me know if there's any raised hands out there, or just feel free to speak up. Again, this is the first time we've done this, so none of us really know what to expect. So it's hard to believe we're moving into 2021, but I imagine that most people are quite excited to leave 2020 behind. In 2020, COVID-19 and the coronavirus have had a tremendous impact on our county budget and on our county family. But I'm happy to report to this date, 0 Isabella County employees have tested positive for COVID-19. Cause to celebrate. So while we focused on budgets, a place called the Center for State and Local Government Excellence performed a survey of specifically public sector employees to determine how COVID-19 had impacted them personally and professionally. The poll showed that although public sector employees were deeply worried about such things as their personal safety and family finances, they do value serving in the public sector during the pandemic and regard it as a source of pride. The nationwide poll showed that 56% of public sector employees believe their family has been negatively impacted financially by COVID-19. In terms of their professional lives, 85% report that the pandemic has impacted the nature of their job, what they do, where they work, or how they go about their tasks. And 74% report working remotely at least some of the time. Things have changed. The poll revealed that the pandemic did not cause most public sector employees to consider changing jobs, and in fact, showed a growing source of pride and public awareness of their service. It also showed that the majority of public sector respondents value serving their community during this difficult time. The poll also revealed the reliance on local government in times like these and the great trust placed, especially in local government. It reminds us all of the importance of a call to public service. And I believe it's been harder to serve in these times for some, but likely it has been of more importance to do so. As a county, we have put strong measures in place to limit risk and exposure for staff and the visiting public we serve. The COVID-19 preparedness and response plan was carefully crafted and implemented in May and has now undergone 7 revisions. The county entered phase 2 of the plan on June 4th, 2020, and remains in phase 2 given the local COVID-19 case trajectory. 168 days ago, the county building entrances were locked and signed and signed and signed again. But effective 1 week ago, last Monday, by way of the generosity of the trial court and the Governmental Employees Labor Council, we now have an Isabella County Trial Court officer stationed at the county building's west entrance. We do feel this, provides better service to the public and better protections for our staff. Now, when people come to the locked door, they are greeted with assistance. But of course, not just the entrances changed. This guy says, keep your hands in sight if you want to stay healthy. So this might have been the feller he was looking for 100 years ago, but what once meant one thing clearly now means something very different. Now, the good guys wear the mask to stay healthy and to keep others healthy. We used to proclaim resolutions to an eager crowd, and now we screen share them and read them to unseen audiences. But our learning curve continued, and of course, we started to Zoom. Not everyone took to Zoom, but the board embraced it as the new way of conducting county board business, and they blazed a new trail. Some people enjoyed the Zoom platform and really took to it. Had a lot of fun with it. And some got creative with it. But everyone started doing it, even on YouTube. And although it doesn't look like we're having fun at this particular meeting, notice on YouTube, we don't have any thumbs down at that point in the meeting. At least we have 1 thumbs up. We Zoomed across jurisdictions on the Intergovernmental Affairs meeting. And we Zoomed several committees, boards, and commissions, including Human Rights Committee, the Isabella County Planning Commission, which was one of the first ones out of the gate. Zoning Board of Appeals have been meeting on Zoom. And the Material Recovery Facility Advisory Board had their last meeting on Zoom. We held leadership meetings regularly on Zoom, and apparently so did the rest of the whole entire planet. To put it in perspective, there are currently 50 million tweets per day on Twitter. Chairman, if that doesn't offer you good perspective, let's look at some other forms of mass media and the time it took them to amass an audience of 50 million. It took radio 38 years. It took television 13 years. The internet was a bit faster at 4 years. And more recently, Facebook took 2 years to reach a market audience of 50 million. Prior to COVID-19, Zoom boasted 10 million users a day. In April, amidst COVID, they reported that number had climbed to over 300 million per day. Pandemic or not, we are living in exponential times. We keep going, we keep improving, and we keep finding new ways. Meanwhile, state shared revenues merely tick upwards, barely beyond flatlining. We do, however, anticipate over $1.3 million in state revenue sharing in fiscal year 21. What do you see here? I can't help but see a shark in the waters. This graph, I don't know, does anyone else see the shark? Half of these monies, the convention facility taxes at 270,000 plus, are sent over to our substance abuse agency, Mid-State Health Network, each year. COVID-19 has impacted jail inmate numbers due to spatial or separation limitations that are required due to the disease. Revenues are projected to flatline or somewhat decline in fiscal year 21. This graph shows the retirement expenses comparatively for the defined benefit and the defined contribution retirement plans. The defined contribution amounts are rising as this is the only retirement plan option for new hires. The costs for defined benefit are determined annually by actuary and have declined in recent years due to the alternate amortization schedule that the county board adopted with MERS.
Nicole, a question right there.
Yes, sir.
And maybe I didn't, when I went through here, how many people do we have in defined benefit versus defined contribution like staff?
There are currently 67 active defined benefit members and 155 active defined contribution members.
155 defined contribution. Thank you.
You're welcome. On a happy note, see the smiley face, interest income is climbing. And certainly the other bright spot in fiscal year 21 is property tax revenues. This is the only revenue category in the fiscal year 21 recommended budget, as in a large category, that is expected to increase. Per equalization data, the county saw an increase of 4.69% in its taxable value from 2019 to 2020. In addition to this, the county is anticipating over $1 million in the fiscal year 21 recommended budget attributed to the addition of a 136 turbine wind farm in the northern sections of the county. And in the recommended budget, it's expected to be at 84% completion by tax day, December 31st. We're holding the line in fiscal 21 with reduced overall expenses and with less transfers in. I present you a balanced fiscal year 21 recommended general fund budget with a use of $313,139 of general fund balance. The fiscal year 21 Isabella County General Fund recommended budget contains revenues in total of $21,013,710, including that use of $313,139 of fund balance I just referenced. You will see the transfer in of other funds of just over $76,000. This represents a transfer in from the capital improvement fund of $46,655 and closes out that fund to help cover the cost of the $55,000 capital project to replace the penthouse roof at the county building. The other transfer in that category is almost $30,000 from the clerk's CPL fund to cover a portion of wages in her office. I would point out the Register of Deeds Automation Fund also transfers to cover some of the part-time wages in her office. And although it's not specifically represented on this page, the Delinquent Tax Revolving Fund and PA 123 fund also cover staff, which we'll talk about later. This pie chart makes it clear to see that our major revenues are property taxes at 65%, followed by 16% federal and state revenues and 10% charges for services. That's really the bulk of it. As I stated before, we are holding the line in fiscal year 21 with reduced overall expenses from the current year. This is not an easy task given increased costs for wages and benefits. However, the recommended budget does include a 1% increase in wages and implementation of healthcare cost shares for plans A, B, and C at 10, 5, and 0% respectively. Additionally, three major areas stand out as the general fund's greatest centers of services, and as such, they represent the greatest centers of cost. Those are the general government, judicial, and public safety. Expenditures detail the hills and dales throughout all of our departments and general fund categories. Or stated much less flowery, in the administration department expenses is where the $300,000 is budgeted to represent a savings associated with implementation of a hiring pause. If you read the budget transmittal message, you know this does not mean that vacant positions will not be filled. Rather, it means that a vacant position will not be filled automatically and will undergo a thoughtful review of how the recent pandemic or other factors altered, changed, or otherwise optimized the duties of the position prior to its posting in order to right-size each county position. Just want to point out, this is where you see that half of the convention facilities tax is going to our mid-state health network substance abuse agency. It's that top line on this page. You will note here also that we've increased the appropriation request built in for the Central Michigan District Health Department at what they have requested. We anticipate an increase in the medical examiner contract. And as it has stood for many years, the community mental health appropriation remains unchanged. Transfers to other funds have decreased mainly due to another cause for celebration, and that is the elimination of any debt obligation of the general fund in the current fiscal year. In the current year, we made the last payment on the courthouse and jail bond. There's a transfers to other funds category on here. Those include just over 31,000 to GIS fund and 6,600 to community services. The fiscal year 21 recommended budget does not include any changes personnel or staffing levels. Only one personnel request was received in the fiscal year requested budget, and given the budget climate, it was not approved. General fund capital projects that are funded within fiscal year 21 recommended budget include the $55,000 for the county building penthouse roof replacement, $99,413 in sheriff's office patrol vehicle replacement, and just over $11,000 for computer-aided dispatch software in the sheriff's office. Capital projects that are funded in the special revenue and proprietary funds include $27,500 for vehicle replacement in the inspections fund, $105,000 in the Parks and Recreation Fund for equipment and projects that are within the Parks Master Plan. And we will make sure they either have a 3/4 ton pickup to haul that trailer or purchase a 3/4 ton pickup before purchasing the trailer. Just over $85,000 for a new weigh scale at the material recovery facility, with those funds to come from the generous spring 2% grant from the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe of Michigan that was already granted. And almost $87,000 for a new upfeed belt and main ram cylinder for the Bay Material Recovery Facility, with funds to come from equipment reserves at the county and city of Mount Pleasant. That project you've seen on the books for a while. COVID put that project on the back burner, unfortunately. So we are looking to do that project in fiscal 21. Capital projects not funded include the central dispatch console and CAD projects and the Lake Isabella water supply well rehabilitation. As far as central dispatch, it is recommended that $300,000 of central dispatch fund balance be assigned to such future projects to begin saving for the major expenses. The Lake Isabella Water Supply Fund requires more examination to determine the budgetary impact of current improvements this fiscal year and the new water rate structure recently put in place before new improvements are budgeted in that fund. So now we'll move away from the county's general fund budget and into other funds, which we budget for. As we've talked about in the past, some of these funds have transfers in from the general fund and some have transfers out to the general fund, like indirect costs. Parks and Recreation is a good example of that on this page. Indigent defense is another one that has kind of both. The general fund makes an appropriation to the Indigent Defense Fund to cover the MIDC grant match. But through that grant, they also pay indirect costs to the general fund. Many of these special revenue funds carry a fund balance, which is not a bad thing. And we budget such that none of these funds end the year with a negative fund balance. That's something Department of Treasury frowns upon. We predict revenues and expenses for all of these funds, and we make up the difference with general fund transfers. Of particular note is there are no transfers out from the delinquent tax revolving fund or PA 123 fund to the general fund in the fiscal year 21 recommended budget. Are there any questions at this time about budget information?
Chairman Green?
Yes,
Nicole, I had a conversation with Nicole earlier today in regards to if the commissioners on their draft budget can scroll or look at page number, oh, give me a minute here. It is page 14 of the proposed, Isabella said, title of it says draft at the top, page 14, Isabella County General Fund recommended budget. Just want to call the commissioner's attention to, it says beginning fund balance, change of use of fund balance, and ending fund balance. Couple issues that I had with that was that the fund balance that we're talking about is not the unreserved fund balance. That number is much different than that $8,990,000. And under also under 2020 amended budget, that change of use of fund balance, that should be about $1.1 million, not 283,000, because we have pulled out our last board meeting. We had a $900,000 budget amendment, I believe. So that is also should be included in that, and that's not. And also, I believe we're going to hit one for 150 tonight, possibly, and then probably another 75 to 80,000 if the rest of the wage and job classification studies with the department heads goes through as anticipated going back to April. So that change in fund balance. So that puts us about the beginning fund balance. I don't like that terminology there. I think that opens up to a whole nother can of worms in certain areas. So I'd like to, and Nicole and I discussed this earlier, I'd like to see it, if we're going to put the fund balance like that, we definitely need to spell out what's reserved, unreserved, and the other three categories of fund balances. Because otherwise, it looks like our fund balance is a lot higher than the unrestricted amount truly is. And that unrestricted amount is probably, again, I'm not putting pen to paper because that's too early for me yet, but probably about 4.5 million, give or take, or between 4.4 and 4.5 million, depending on how much we pull out and everything. So that's where we're going to end up after this use of fund balance is not at, I believe, at 8.3 million, but at the unrestricted part, about 4 point some, a little over 4 million, somewhere in that range. So, and that pays and I wanted to point that out because that plays into a lot of other issues as we go forward, working in negotiations and other issues to show that, yes, we may have some fund balance left, but that's restricted in other funds. So just wanted to point that out unless I'm incorrect in that, but I wanted to make sure that was known to the commissioners. And Nicole, I also wanted to compliment you. This is a very, very, very good detailed budget explanation. I think this is straightforward. I mean, it was easy for me to understand and read. I think it's a good reflection of what we've discussed among the commissioners and also the board members. Tobin and I'm not going to speak for Tobin, he can add, but I think it's a very good presentation. We're not getting it. We're getting it 2 weeks before our finalization of this is due. I think the commissioners, I think Tobin and I both, and again, I'm speaking for Tobin, I don't mean to, sorry, Tobin. One of our things in our committee, we really wanted to have the other board members involved more. And I think I think Nicole, you've done a great job of presenting, making board members aware. And again, no one likes to take money out of the fund balance. In this, we stayed away from certain areas. I'm not going to comment on the delinquent tax revolving fund because we are in litigation. I'm just going to say that I think it's not the greatest presentation to the county constituents, the county taxpayers, that the county is actually suing itself. So I just completely am flabbergasted by that, but so be it. And that's all I'm going to comment on that. We have a couple things we took in regards to the wind turbine property tax. We took, I believe, still a conservative estimate. I don't think we're pulling all of it that we could have or budgeted for. I think Nicole made a very good call on that, doing about 82%. possibilities. If you look out to I can see out my window of my house right now. I can't see them, but probably when the trees are down, I'm going to be able to see them. But if you live anywhere in the northern part of the county again, you see the turbines going up. So, and they're definitely in the southern part of the county and operational. So that is revenue. One other thing I wanted to point out, again, this really doesn't have to do with our budget, so to say, tonight, but I wanted to call the board's members. I think Nicole actually spelled it out very good in regards to the amount of, I call it debt. There's different methods to call it. Debt as far as the defined benefit, what's due, roughly around $15 million yet. So just to call the commissioners to that level of funding. So we have that on our plate. We have the jail on our plate coming up. So those are two large ticket items this county has to address in the future. It's not going to get solved tonight, but we've got a lot of large term issues coming up. The good thing is the county, I think, is headed in the right direction. It just has to be managed well. And again, Nicole, I really like this presentation. I thought you did an excellent job.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. Your math is good on the fund balance. Please don't think the presentation is over at this.
Gotcha, sorry.
That's mostly just the number. But I do want to say thank you for your push of transparency. That's really what the whole budget explanation was about. And in the final budget document that you see, we will have a breakout of those fund balance categories. So you can see what makes that up, and you'll see that some of it is always is assigned for purposes. So I think that was a great point, and we can include that to be even more transparent going forward.
Very good.
Are there any other questions at this time? So, yes, Mr. Chair.
I have one question. Through the special revenue sources, how much money, Nicole, did we actually use in indirect costs total? Do you know?
Indirect costs total in fiscal 21.
Yes.
Melissa, I think you're on here, but I want to say it was around 700.
You don't have, I'm just looking for a
I
round
could probably
number.
go back a slide too. It's around 750,000.
I know we looked at the indirect costs for the Central Michigan District Health Department, I believe, and that was around a $50,000 bill, if I remember.
The only funds that we charge indirect costs, and actually I talk about that later as I go through the general fund departments and those outside funds, I actually talk about which ones pay indirect costs. So
Okay.
It's actually a really good lead into the rest of the presentation.
We'll wait till you go through your numbers. Thank you.
Yeah. You're very welcome, Mr. Chairman. So that represented a whole lot of numbers and information, but now I want to talk a little bit about Word. And we can always go back to questions later if we need to. I wanted just to point out the inundation of information that we have today. There are about 540,000 words in the English language, and this represents about 5 times as many as during Shakespeare's time. Such that it is estimated that a week's worth of the New York Times newspapers now contain more information than a person was likely to come across in a lifetime in the 18th century. In fact, it is estimated that 4 exabytes, which is 4 times 10 to the 19th power of unique information will be generated this year, and that is more than the previous 5,000 years. And that was before COVID. Just imagine the information explosion that is out there now. I heard someone saying the other day that it is exhausting just to live right now. So maybe all this information is part of it. And yet still somehow we endure With all the added pressures of today, I tell you folks, these are dedicated and invested employees because you invest in them. The clerk's office is just the first of many we're going to discuss that are funded within our general fund. Their elections canvassing board posed a unique challenge for the electronic meeting platform, but they did find a way. And Carol from the clerk's staff is performing curbside service with a smile. I would note here, marriage licenses, death certificates have increased dramatically from last year. So there's no correlation. For some offices, certain employees came back to different looking offices, and some continue to work remotely as much as possible. And it felt like in administration, we were zooming right out of the gate, and that was under Margaret's direction. The need for that early on started us down that path, and we kept things running. More FOIA requests and more total gross payroll than last year. And at your gracious direction, we kept payroll and benefits paid. In the current year, we will process in total over $17,637,858 in payroll and benefits across countywide operations and provide healthcare benefits to 625 souls.
Wow.
The Drain Commissioner's Office had a big year. Pre-COVID, Drains had a successful 2% application for PFAS sampling at the county landfill. And they were able to complete the water tank and pipe repair and repaint project at Lake Isabella Water Supply. And that was all upon wrapping up $1 million watershed protection project through the NRCS.
Wow.
On-site equalization staff were able to safely social distance, and working remotely really was nothing new for our contracted equalization services. Although we weren't always sure where he was zooming in from. We always knew where to find facilities employees, though. Remote work was not an option for them. They were on site, complete with smiling faces, and a new facilities director to lead them. Steve Shoemaker in the lower right if you haven't met him. Facility staff continued traditional maintenance and much enhanced cleaning efforts, including at the trial court, where they took zooming to heart across the entire state of Michigan. They placed very thoughtful personal protection equipment and retrofits throughout the court facility. And while circuit court and front of the court caseloads were down slightly from last year, the court caseload and traffic tickets are up substantially. Improvements included this thing they call the Johnny 5, which is an iPad that court proceeding participants can use in the event they do not have access to Zoom, a computer, and/or the internet. And I don't know that they've been having court in courtrooms yet, but once they do, they are clearly ready for it. All that remote work could not have been possible without information systems. Talk about critical infrastructure during COVID. The county is able to promote remote work because of Michelle and Chris. Over the past year, they have made 40 additional remote installations possible. None of these statistics are going down that you see here. We're only buying more. Monitors, tablets, scanners, and cell phone numbers have all increased. The prosecuting attorney's office never missed a beat and adjusted meticulously. When in-person services were necessary, they were performed with the utmost regard for safety of all involved. The uptick in district court caseloads at the trial court was also felt in the prosecuting attorney's office, with over 700 more district court events attended by prosecuting attorney staff. The Register of Deeds has certainly embraced the electronic movement. Online document searching was strongly encouraged during COVID-19. E-filings are up this year with about a 20% increase, and passports saw nearly a 50% increase over last year's numbers. While Sheriff Maine and the Sheriff's Office have had a particularly interesting year, and I can see why he didn't choose to update his photo. I don't know that he'd be smiling so big. Police clerk services remain steady throughout COVID, and there's still about one FOIA request each and every day of the calendar year, and at least 2 people dropping in every day to get fingerprinted. Amazes me. So unfortunately, the statistics you do not want to see go up have increased in the road patrol reports, including accident reports, assaults, child abuse and neglect cases, criminal sexual assault, fraud, stolen vehicles, larceny, robbery, suicides, and weapon offenses. And as I understand it, this data is collected on a calendar year basis, and therefore does not really include any of the statistics that might be attributable to COVID-19. So I think you're going to see them increase more. COVID-19 has certainly impacted corrections department numbers. All of these numbers are lower due to COVID-19. Even with the impact of COVID-19, we're trying to hold the line in the Sheriff's Office revenues. We do anticipate further CARES Act reimbursement in the current fiscal year. I would point out the county received just yesterday its first CARES Act dollars, and that was the 1.5% replacement revenue in place of our August revenue sharing payment. So we know the accounts work. So we know the money can flow this way. So we're hoping some more does in the fiscal. Actually, one of the bright budget spots with COVID, aside from some building and energy savings, is food service at the jail. Since we don't contract for this service, we can actually decrease costs when inmate numbers are down. Clearly, one of the main ongoing projects for the sheriff and the commissioners is the new jail project, which you're going to hear about when I'm done, more about when I'm done talking. You'll hear that the project is in full swing with concepts that are becoming organized layouts, and with specific design features that will eventually become floor plans. Well, these, of course, are all pre-COVID photos. This is more representative of today's jail project meetings. Although we're not meeting in person, we do press forward, and the board must be diligent to right-size the budget and repayment schedule of the project, as of course it will impact the county and its residents for generations to come. While the treasurer's office is a general fund department, staff expenses for 3 of their full-time employees are covered through other funds. You weren't aware. 2 of the staff are wages are paid from the delinquent tax revolving fund, and 1 staff is paid from the PA 123 fund, as the duties of the respective staff primarily serve the functions of the respective fund. The treasurer is custodian of all the county cash transactions across 74 bank accounts, and reconciles annually over $75 million in property taxes across all taxing jurisdictions in the county. And the treasurer manages the delinquent taxes for local units at nearly $4 million each year, and the foreclosure process that is about to undergo a drastic restructure statewide. Rounding out the general fund funded departments is Veterans Affairs. Ian procured new marketing materials through a Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency grant last fiscal year and through the expertise of a marketing firm called King Media. We're very proud of that. The Public Defender's Office, as I stated before, has its own fund due to the specific grant revenues received from MIDC. It's not part of the general fund, although the general fund is the source of required grant match for the Indigent Defense Fund, and that fund transfers indirect costs to the general fund. This is one of the genuinely happiest photos I think I have seen in a long time. I'm really glad Tom did this because I personally have not met the majority of these county employees because they're off-site at the Public Defender's Office. They look like a happy bunch. Last year's statistics showed a 12-month case breakdown of 506 felonies and only 215 misdemeanors. As we work to fully staff the Public Defender's Office, they'll be able to take on more caseload. So this slide really should have been split into two slides, as emergency management is a general fund department and Central Dispatch 911 is its own fund. The general fund funds emergency management, and surcharges on phone lines are the major source of revenues for 911. Central Dispatch 911 fund transfers indirect costs to the general fund. Look at these numbers. Look at what these employees do. It's unfathomable to me. Over 70,000 incidents dispatched.
Jeez.
Annually, over 104,000 phone calls. Statistics here also show an unfortunate trend with increases in domestic violence, assault, and burglary calls. I love this photo. It's a great photo of the dispatchers, but Mark is missing. Those of you who Zoom with Mark understand, though, you never really get to see much of him. And if you Zoom with Mark, this is the view you see. The large capital project to install the new workstations at the dispatch center was completed just prior to COVID's impact. And thankfully so, as Mark also served as the chief PPE procurement officer for the entire county shortly after this. The workstation project was budgeted at $104,000. And I'm happy to report, when all was said and done and installed, it came in about $28,000 under budget. And there you see the new workstation with the monitors. So in a similar situation as emergency management and 911, community development is a general fund department funded by the general fund, while inspections is its own fund with dedicated revenues, and inspections transfers indirect costs to the general fund. Many of the increases you see here in their numbers are attributed to the new wind farm construction, with soil erosion and zoning permits and inspections all doubling due to the turbines. And also including assignment of addresses to each turbine. It's not something you think about, but each turbine has its own address and its own tax parcel ID number. No doubt you've noticed some of these commercial and industrial projects happening throughout the county. It's hard to miss the new Mercantile Bank building on Pickard. And it's just great to see so much new growth throughout our county. Probably none is more visible than the wind turbine project, which began construction last winter. This is a photo of, I believe they're heating, they're forcing hot air into the concrete core because it's December and it's Michigan, essentially.
December 11th.
What it looks like under there, this actually is not a picture from the new wind farm. I didn't have one, unfortunately, but this is from a co-township turbine, I believe. And this is what it looks like before they would pour the concrete foundation, and this is what it looks like after. So on the Northern Wind Farm foundation work is almost complete, and really this has now become a common sight at quite a rapid pace. In this photo, we're reminded of the little acreage, less than half an acre as I understand it, is taken out of agricultural production due to the siting of a turbine. But by siting the turbine here, it is like securing this land for agriculture for generations to come. We don't think about it that way, but the wind farm is actually a very large ag preservation tool. The Commission on Aging is its own fund, and it's funded through a special millage of 0.8776 mils and separate from the general fund. The Commission on Aging consistently receives gracious funding through the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe of Michigan and its 2% grant program, and also grants through our Region 7 Area Agency on Aging. Commission on Aging staff was happy to embrace the PPE required to provide essential services to the elderly. And it meant so much. This lady says she actually enjoys her meals more now after having that time off. She didn't realize how much she needed them. Don't ever forget that we perform such important services. Here's COA employee Tina Campbell on CMU Ask the Specialist pre-COVID. Do you think that leaning into photos will become a thing of the past? Do you think we'll be able to identify all photos like this instantly as pre-COVID? Because certainly we will recognize photos like this as being during COVID. Whatever the charge, the Commission on Aging employees donned their PPE and went to the task at hand. Or when they were able, they ditched the PPE and went electronic with online fitness classes. And they still had over 44,000 hours of volunteer service, over 158,000 miles traveled, and over 33,000 home delivered meals until they can see a full return to the congregate opportunity. And they got creative with in-car parades and drive-through beer float events, and they are anxious to return to the full engagement of social interaction. Onto materials recovery facility. Whoever would have thought that these images are what would make people most happy during a global pandemic. But the demand is real, folks, and we answered the call. MRF operations were some of the first on-site services to resume after our closure on March 18th. The material recovery facility revenues come from contracts for curbside recycling, commodity sales, processing fees, and general fund assistance as needed, which in fiscal year 21 is budgeted at $300,000. The MRF does transfer in indirect costs to the general fund of approximately $74,000. Parks and Recreation Fund is also millage funded. It has a 0.35 mil levy to fund its operations, along with campground revenues and supplemental grant funds as awarded. COVID-19 had an unprecedented impact on park operations. but they adapted very cheerfully and most diligently. When the parks were open, ready, and throughout the season, parks returned a total of over $40,000 in refunds. But payroll expenses for parks were down, so it helped to absorb some of the loss and balance things financially. That rounds out our departments and our funds. But I can't talk about parks and loss and not take a moment to remember the greatest loss our family has had over our last year. And remind each of you to reach out to your county family if the need is there, whether it's COVID related or not, and reach out to our county resources. Our Employee Assistance Program offers confidential counseling for you, your dependents, and your household members, whether you are full-time or a part-time employee. Please just call. Thank you. I am proud to serve with you all.
Any questions for Nicole on the budget presentation?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Commissioner Hope?
Yeah, just a comment, but Nicole, I want to thank you and your staff and Steve Krenovic and the department heads and elected officials. As you look down through the line items on expenses, you see most of them either holding the line or even decreasing a little bit. And that, I know it's not just a matter of plugging numbers in there. I know it's a lot of work with these departments, and those folks still have to be able to provide the services that they do. So it represents a lot of work. I understand that. I think we're in a good place with this budget. We've got a little extra revenue from the windmills, which is good. We don't have the 800,000 that we used last year from the DTRF, and the expected revenue streams are all decreasing except for the taxes. It's the only one that's increasing for us. So there was some real challenges here, and we put together a budget that uses only $313,000 of the reserves, and still leaves us over $8 million in reserves, which Commissioner Horton pointed out. Only about half of that is unassigned, but that's nothing new from previous years. We've had assigned and unassigned reserve balance. Also, I think a more intensive review of vacancies makes a lot of sense, to see which jobs we need to fill and which jobs maybe we don't. The capital improvement list, excuse me, of only $165,000 really represents we're only going to buy what we absolutely have to. It's a lot of work went into this, and I think we're in a good place. I also think time-wise, we're in a good place, a little farther ahead than we were last year at this point here, and that's where Commissioner Horton and I wanted to be. We wanted to give the other commissioners more time to consider this and more time to put in their input. So I'm eager to hear what the other commissioners have to say about it.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Jalajinsky?
I just want to compliment Nicole on the budget message. I think she did a really good job of providing information on our challenges, opportunities, some of the things that we're going to be facing in the future. There's not a lot of detail, but there is enough detail for us to have an understanding of those things that we're going to be having to deal with in the very near future. Very good, Nicole.
Other discussion? Commissioner Marino, did you raise your hand there?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank Nicole for the job she did. Taking over for Margaret is not easy, but I think she did a very, very, very good job of presenting the budget today. Got to go one last time in front of finance and budget if there's any questions or things that can be carried out at that time. And then 2 weeks from today, we'll have the adoption of the budget prior to a public hearing on it. So again, well, thank you very much. An excellent job. Commissioners appreciate it and that compliments you. Thank you. Gentlemen, I've been asked for one commissioner or two to take a 5-minute recess if we could. Is that all right with you?
Good.
Let's take a 5-minute recess, Commissioner Swaney. I'm sure that'll help you out. 5 minutes and we'll be back.
Would you like me to mute you?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to say that I didn't realize we started at 3 o'clock. I was over at the health department and all that doing the checks. And so when I found out that it was at 3 o'clock, it was always at 4 o'clock. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's all right. We had it in the agenda and I thought everybody knew about it, Commissioner.
I see that now.
Yeah. Well, you'll get a taste of it again on the next time we have on the budget. And also when we do the public hearing and that, so. Let's go down the road.
The meeting is recorded, you know, it'll be archived out there on YouTube, Commissioner. So if you want to go back and watch the beginning.
I will, for sure, Nicole. Sorry.
George, if I stand behind my shop, I can count 40 windmills from my backyard, so.
And did you put in for any or what?
We did, but I got two properties in Ottawa that one has a line going through, but Deerfield Township didn't get the zoning changed in time, so they backed out. So most of my property is in Deerfield Township, so. And then some of our property was too close to the Mount Pleasant Airport, so.
They're really working on the ones that are going on our place there and that road that goes back in there. Really, they're really going at it to get them done, so.
Paul Gross has one on his land too, Paul Gross.
Yep. Yeah, that's where the blade went that everybody signed.
Wow.
Yep, it's actually east of Mater Sawmill on the north side of Wademan Road. It's right out there in the middle of 40 acres. In fact, the reason they got it there is because Mater Brothers Sawmill signed up and leased. So there was no setback. Everybody ready to go back to work? We are now back in session. Let's go to item number 2. And where's my agenda? That would be the presentation, update on jail and the sheriff's office project. Daryl DeHaan of Integrated Architectural Services and Rob Conley from Clark Construction Company. Gentlemen, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, this is Daryl DeHaan. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to share a report of the Isabella County Jail Law Enforcement Center. My purpose here today is to give you a kind of a broad overview. It represents what you'll see today, the floor plan, some renderings, represents most work happening during COVID. I was so enamored by Nicole's numbers. I went back and I looked at to see exactly how many virtual meetings this team has been through in the last 6 months, and I counted 46. So that's a lot, and certainly this is a first for me. I can probably speak on behalf of the entire team that a project this scale, of this importance to do it virtually for over the last 6 months has been pretty remarkable. It's not been without challenges, but it's been one that this team has gotten through. The county team, I know the sheriff, I saw him on the line earlier. Just the accessibility that the county has had with the design team in working through a pretty vigorous process at making sure that we are on track and on budget, first and foremost, has been a really good one. So I'm going to share my screen. You should be seeing you should be now seeing a floor plan. Does everybody see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yep,
Yes.
we see it, Daryl.
Great. So what you're looking at is your proposed new jail. You're looking at about 60,000 square feet of inmate housing, of booking, of law enforcement use, administrative functions. I'm going to zoom in here on the first floor plan. I know that some areas you won't be able to read things. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. My purpose again is to give you a broad overview and then take any questions that you as a board may have. The project is designed to be a single story, essentially what I call this kind of the liner, this L shape that wraps around the pod. This pod contains 187 beds for inmate housings that consists of 2-bedroom or 2-bed, 4-bed dormitory style housing, and we have some special needs housing that was discussed pre-COVID as a need for infectious control. Those inmates that may have contagious ailments, whether even if it's the flu, we elevated that just based on this episode that we're currently in, and we're going through to 10 special needs housing types. And what makes those special is that they're in negative pressure cells, so they're designed similar to what a isolation unit would be in a hospital. Where that unit would be under negative pressure, so its exhaust goes directly outside. It doesn't allow any air outside, so it's again designed under a negative HVAC pressure. So that's kind of a unique development for the project. It's a best practice solution, but just given the world that we live in, it's a needed practice. So just a quick highlight on that. I'll quickly walk you through, and I'll just walk you through so we essentially have a stacked inmate pod that's really a mezzanine level. The control station for the officers happen on a mezzanine. So this is where that central monitoring and control happens for inmate housing. It provides them almost a 360-degree view of the cells, both on the second floor and down into the first floor. Where view is constricted and some of the, like an officer sitting here, he's going to have a hard time looking down onto the first floor here. There will be security cameras that will enhance that view. Just going through the core of the jail, we have a sally port here that will accommodate 3 bays essentially of county vehicles, both for transfer and for arresting officer, temporary parking of vehicles. The intake for arrestees happens here in a pre-booking area, inmate property and storage here, and then we have a whole series of holding cells. For arrestees, the booking control station for arrestees happens centrally here. Work release program, kind of its own program, own area happens in this area. So this is really kind of the first step that an arrestee would have toward booking and just processing through the jail. So that's kind of the booking and holding area. Moving down, we have what we know is very important today, a series of video courts. So we have 2 large video courtrooms, 2 smaller video courtrooms. This allows for just remote communication with judges, for arraignments, etc. That grew a little bit over this episode, just recognizing how important that is both now and will likely be in the future. In this same area, we have non-contact inmate visiting stations here. So it's all served from the secured back side and then the public front side. We have a lineup viewing room, general storage. I'm going to get to here in a second some provisions that we're making in the design for future expansion. That would be both for future court. If it were to move at a future date, we don't want to hamstring ourselves now for decisions that may happen 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. That's true of the pod design as well. That's designed to be replicated. I'm just going to step back real quick. This pod is designed to be replicated in this zone here. So you'll kind of notice this void. This could be replicated and doubled. Don't know when or if that'll ever happen, but again, we didn't want to design in such a way that couldn't happen if it were a need in the future. Moving back into the public area, so entry vestibule, public lobby waiting area. We have a public conference and training room here up front. We have an interview and fingerprint room, special use for public without kind of getting into the secure space. All the records and administration then happen in this next kind of band that runs from here to going down a little bit further around here. So this is the sheriff's office. Essentially his sheriff's office here in the corner, the undersheriff, administrators, detectives, squad room, sergeant room, central functions like break room, toilet rooms, evidence storage, forensics room, special unit room, detective interview rooms, soft interviews. So having that able to be served from the public within this area, kind of its own internal corridor, without getting into the sheriff's kind of more private area was a big goal for that area. So again, moving down, we have a classroom and physical training room for the officers. For those special classes, force on force training, physical training, we have a small exercise room, and then locker provisions that would support changing of both men and women officers. So we have a men's changing area, male and a female changing area, and then obviously dedicated changing rooms for that locker support. We have a secure corridor. I'm going to back up one more time here. So this corridor here that lines, that is really the separation between the pod and the liner. This is the secure area. So this is where prisoner movement would happen. So that's the secure line in the jail. Behind that becomes the secured perimeter. So this is that secured vestibule that one would go through. Master control for the facility takes place here, allowing sight lines both into the public corridor, down this long corridor here, and up this corridor. So this is really the hub, and the secured electronics, the monitoring, everything happens within that area. Going back into what we kind of call the back of house services, this area here contains laundry and food services. So this is size for both day one, but it is it has provisions in it, even though we aren't buying the equipment and et cetera early as part of this project. It could be added to support additional inmate housing in the future. Back of house at the tail end of this leg of the building exists mechanical, electrical, all switch gear, boilers, domestic hot water circulation systems, fire protection systems, all kind of exist in this area. We do have a loading dock, receiving dock area, which large items, food, those type of things would be brought in through the loading dock. And then of course a secure vestibule through which all that would pass. The mechanical system is 3 rooftop package units. So it represented the most efficient, best value. It's a blend of upfront cost and long-term performance. It's a rooftop package unit. We do have, it's a highly efficient unit, so it meets or exceeds ASHRAE guidelines for energy consumption. Some of the other notable mechanical electrical systems we will have outside here 2 large diesel generators. They're large enough that natural gas isn't the best value option. Those will be diesel fed. Those will serve in the event of a power outage, backup power to critical infrastructure within the jail. So of course, all inmate housing, secured monitoring systems, things that might not be included in that area might be like a small offices of the sheriffs. But critical infrastructure is supported by that emergency backup generator. Some other notes on building systems, mechanical, electrical, plumbing types. This project will consist of all LED lighting. It will have occupancy sensors to sense movement, and so we're not leaving lights on and sucking electricity in the event that it's not being used. We will be using daylight harvesting, some photo cells, just trying to capture daylight, primarily in the sheriff's office areas, to just maximize that free daylight that we get in those 2 days a year that we have sun, although this summer was an exception. I'm going to take you, I know I'm going through this very fast, but I want to hit it at a high level. This is the exterior. So this would be an aerial kind of looking down onto the jail. Exterior materials are made up of a combination of masonry brick veneer and insulated metal panels. So the goal here was to be, again, efficient with the design, to give you low to no maintenance options in the future, to where you're not having to paint, you're not having to replace panels. So these are durable, long-lasting, enduring materials. So we have what we consider the more public facade of the facility. Here we are proposing a brick veneer. This would be the sheriff's side here, the Sally Port here. You see the pod kind of rising as another 8 or so feet off the roof of the first floor space. And then when we get down to the end here to some of those more utilitarian back of house spaces that will likely be shielded from public view, and in the back of the facility, we went with an insulated metal panel. So that provides, again, a highly durable painted metal panel finish with the insulation outboard of the cavity wall. A very, very efficient envelope solution. Another a vignette, a peek at what the public entry would look like. So again, here we're trying to be mindful of how we spend the dollars and how we are most efficient with this. We're proposing just something a little bit more civic in terms of an entry. This would be a either a metal panel or some sort of a cast stone veneer wall that would project into the lobby with the emblem, the name of the facility, and a small canopy that would just provide some shade in that area and really denote that as the main entry area for the public. So here you see some of that brick, some daylight and some windows into the public area. This would be the records clerk area, the sheriff's office, and then turning the corner, some of those other sheriff's offices. And another view of the public entry. Again, just trying to optimize the site to provide best value for types of finishes, types of the amount of landscaping as it relates to local ordinance requirements, hardscaping, of course, draining that. We'll be keeping all of our stormwater on site through a stormwater management system. It'll be cleaned and filtered per township regulations, per township and county regulations. So again, you know, I think that having a jail act as a jail but not look so institutional was a big goal of this design team's. So presenting a little bit softer materials, brick, enduring materials, without having to, you know, bringing daylight into offices. They're going back to the plan. Daylight into the inmate housing will be, and it's not shown on this plan, and for that I apologize, will be provided for in skylights in this area. So we'll have a series of skylights in the roof that will bring daylight per Department of Corrections guidelines into that housing. Then there is an exercise room here that will have a roll up, a really very high roll up door that will provide natural ventilation and daylight to inmates for the allotted amount of time that they're permitted into this area per day.
Carol, you might mention that the cells are prefabricated modular units. I think that's kind of a unique feature that brought a lot of value and to the design. That
yeah, thanks, Rob.
Might be interesting.
Good point. These cells, all of them, with the exception of the dormitory housing here, these larger format cells that are 12 bed ×2 up and down. These cells here that you see repeated are modular prefabricated cells. So these come and they're highly efficient, they're repeatable. They come as almost, so think of a modular home to where it is fabricated under controlled environment, 100% in a factory. So these are, for lack of better terms, plug and play. These come to the site on a flatbed trailer. They include the beds, the plumbing fixtures. They are lined. They have acoustic separations within the walls in the cells. And they literally plug into the building infrastructure. It's plumbing, it's heating and cooling, it's security from the back of the cell. These stack. So think of a shipping container. It's a little bit like a shipping container to where these are, the lower level would support the upper level steel cell. And those represented a significant cost savings over traditional masonry cells. Right now, masons anywhere, especially in the state of Michigan, are very hard to get. So we took that, and the cost has been all over the map. We took that volatility kind of off the table and are partnering currently on a design assist basis with a supplier that will prefab these cells that represented the best value solution. Rob, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Rob will give you an update on all things budget and schedule oriented. And then I'm happy to take any questions from the board as it relates to the design of the jail as it stands today.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Rob Conley, Clark Construction. As Daryl pointed out, and even Nicole in her presentation, right from the beginning, there was a tremendous amount of planning and programming that we all went through that transitioned into design, schematic design development of schematic documents, We're now moving into a second phase, a DD or design development level of documentation. And that's about a midpoint for us in our design process. And we've closely monitored and vetted the budget during the course of all these design steps and processes, and made adjustments to the design where necessary if to keep the project within the program budget that we've allocated for the entire program. Right now, as Daryl mentioned, we've also just recently hired 4 contractors, design assist contractors that represent 5 major trade systems throughout the building. That's HVAC, plumbing, fire protection, electrical, and the detention equipment contractor. The total value of these folks are giving us a soft GMP, or a guaranteed maximum price, and also will be engaging with ourselves, the design team, the county representatives, to help not only maintain that budget, but drive it down and maximize its efficiency wherever we can from their perspectives. Their collective amount of contract value represents about 52% of the entire construction budget. So we've got a great handle, on 52% of the budget at 50% of the design. We're within 1% of the overall budget that we'd established, which is extremely, what I'd expect at this point of the design phase. So we're on a good path for budget at this point. We have opportunities with the design folks that we're bringing in, and some of the rest of the design that has to be vetted through the group to continue to keep pressing that budget down and maintaining it where it needs to be. So I think we're in great shape budget-wise. Schedule-wise in general, I think, and Daryl helped me here a bit, but we've probably from this stage got approximately 14 weeks, maybe 16 of additional design a process that we'll be going through till we get to a complete full set of construction and buildable documents. At that time, we will then reach out through a competitive bidding situation to all the necessary other trade contractors that we need and collect those bids in. That's also probably the time that we'll be submitting all of our documents to the authorities having jurisdiction for their reviews, and county, township, health departments, fire marshals, state inspectors, and go through the timing process through that to gather all of that information we need, with probably at this point an anticipated actual groundbreaking and physical start early spring. March would be a good target date, I think, that we could start in the ground. It would also leave us time before that to pre-order materials and steel and all the mechanical equipment, have that on order in manufacture. The steel cells are about a 15-week lead time. So, we would get those ordered, vetted out, and be ready to go hit the ground running come early spring with where we're at this point.
Commissioner Marino, have you got a question for the gentleman?
Yeah, I do. I'd just like to comment that I really like the feature where inmates get fresh air. That feature, we don't have it now, and I'm sure it'll have behavioral and health benefits. I'm really impressed with that, among so many other things, but that really stuck out for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Chairman Green.
Yes, Mr. Horton.
One of the things I did not notice, and I may have missed it or if it hasn't included, I think when the sheriff, when we were discussing in committee, one of the things he thought was important was storage of like certain types of, like the jet skis, the boats, some of the automobiles possibly. I didn't see that anywhere on the plans. Is that going to be called for, or what's the thoughts on that?
So the thought on that, and you're right, that was in the original plans. That part, that scope in the project has been deferred to a later date. So we are going to, on on the site design for that from an infrastructure standpoint to support that future construction. But from a budget standpoint, you know, it was one of those things that as the team rolled up the sleeves, the county and the sheriff had to make some tough decisions, and it was one of the things that that didn't make it through that round of value engineering. So yes, that was a part of it. It's currently being deferred within the scope of this project.
Okay. Another question I have, and I've been contacted, what is, again, a project this big is, I know you guys are well in charge and you've done this before. What is the use of local laborers and things like that? Is there going to be a plan for that, or I guess a preference, or how does that normally work? Or is it any prevailing wage? How does that work?
Well, we will surely advertise probably statewide for contractors, encourage local participation wherever we can that they can meet, you know, the requirements we set forth. Unless, and Nicole, perhaps you can help, but if the funding source goes to some sort of supplemental federal funding, then a prevailing wage clause would have to be implemented. And that will be in the bidding documents as well. And any bidding contractors will have to comply with that. We'll process and monitor that. But so, you know, it's going to be a wide open bidding scenario, and that would be the provision with the prevailing wage as I know it.
I also like the idea when we had a chance to tour the other jail over in Midland. I don't know if they were prefab, but we had talked about the prefabrication. Again, I can imagine that's going to save quite a bit of money. I mean, just looking at that as far as the budget goes, you know, everything standardized, everything. Now, is that going to be, looking at the design again, we don't have them in front of me, so I'm sorry about that. Is it two things on top of each other? Is that how it's going to be, like a main floor and a mezzanine or something like that? Or how's that going to look?
Yeah, so Commissioner, it is stacked. They are virtually the prefab cells stacked, the dormitory stacked. So it's frankly a two-story jail. The second story is accessed through a stair here for correction staff to the control station. So that is secured by security glazing that would look into both the second floor and then down into the first floor. And then the day rooms that both the mezzanine level and the first floor are shared. And you can see here the stair from the second floor that would go down to the day room on the first floor.
So what is the soundproofing involved with that if they're stacked upon each other? I mean, I've in prior, when I was younger, much younger, lived in apartment buildings where I was on the first floor and somebody was above me. How does that work as far as noise above the first floor persons? Like, is that normally a problem you've seen in jails, or is that a non-issue?
Well, these cells are acoustically insulated. So there is as Daryl mentioned earlier, Commissioner, it's somewhat like a large metal box, and it has two layers of skin. Within those layers of skin, there is insulation in there. So there is an insulation factor. The entire interior is sprayed with a polyurethane product, much like a Rhino liner, if you're familiar with that product, lining truck beds. So extremely durable and so on. So so there is a fair amount of insulation and noise control that you know, within the cells themselves.
Thank you.
Commissioner Engler.
Yeah, once you go to that second story, is because it's a jail facility, you're not required for an elevator in there?
Nope. Correct. We are required to provide barrier-free cells. ADA requires that. Those cells are on the first floor. So we meet that requirement by putting the inmate ADA cells on the first floor. The second floor, just given the size and the limited use for officers, there is an exception for barrier-free accessibility given the really our footprint of the second floor for non-inmates is kind of this swath here. And we are within the code requirements of not needing to provide an elevator for that control station.
And if you were to put another pod section in that empty position, would that be identical as far as requirements to the current pod?
Yeah, we've so what it would likely look like, it would have to get to the, you'd have this secure corridor, and it would kind of go up here, and you would basically, it's kind of like mirroring. If you would mirror this along this line, this would just flip and it would be replicated. Of course, how it's outfitted, whether it's dormitory or fixed cells, 2 beds, 4 beds, whatever, will be determined by the county need at that time. But it has the capacity of being doubled, so 187 times 2.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Chairman?
Yep. Mr. Tobin.
Yeah, a couple of the things that I wanted to see are here, and I'm happy about that. As Commissioner Marino pointed out, the daylight into the housing, exercise room, programming room, these are things that I wanted to see incorporated into this. I'm glad that they are. Also, I like the exterior of it. It looks like an office building. The entrance is easy to find, and that's important in a building like this. So you don't have people wandering around wondering how to get in it. And you pull up and there it is. There's the entrance. It looks like any office building. The brick looks nice. I like it.
Thank you. And that was really one of our goals is, again, being responsible with this, what we call the skin of the building or the envelope, but just so in brick color and texture and all of that can be determined. We've asked the question whether, what red brick or brown brick or just some of the banding, that's all. This is kind of our first swing at the envelope. Within the budget, we have hundreds of choices on what the colors end up, but these represented, again, kind of best value solutions that are enduring, but still give it a sense of civic stance.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for being on deck today. It's a little bit of my fault that this didn't happen earlier because I was thinking that we could possibly do it in face, which is the way I was taught things should be done. But apparently because of the COVID-19 is going to stick around, we're going to be zooming in and zooming out of this. There's one comment I'd like to say later, and I'll let Commissioner Horton do it. Commissioner Horton, do you remember when you got off the ICT bus over there at the Midland jail? And what was your comment?
This does not look like a jail.
You said it looks like a school.
It looks like a school.
Yeah, that's what you, and really, I think it looks that way. It isn't the jail type that we're all used to and are bringing up that. Thank you very much, Rob and Daryl, for coming, and appreciate it. And we'll probably be talking with you tomorrow.
Thanks, Commissioner Green, for having us. Absolutely.
Thanks, Chairman. Thank you, Board.
You're welcome. Moving on, we'll go in. There's no appointments to boards and commissions. We'll go to committee reports, finance and administration. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First up, consider accepting and placing on file the August 20th, 2020 routine personnel items as presented. Commissioners should have a copy of that. Nothing out of the ordinary. Got them right here. Step increases, 1 resignation in the prosecuting attorney's office. We had a new hire at the sheriff's department at the new starting rate of $22.65. So we are competitive and we are able to hire. And apparently, from what I understand, this is a very good candidate. So we are looking forward to that. Parks and Recs, new hires, step increases, and like I said, 1 resignation out of the prosecuting attorney's office. Anybody have any questions in regards to this? Commissioner Hope.
Not a question, but a comment. That one resignation, Alexander Bush, I learned left to serve in the Marine Corps. And that position has been refilled already. We'll see that on the next personnel items list, I think.
Good. Okay. Anything else for anybody, commissioners? Hearing and seeing none, that will move forward to this evening.
Okay, item number 2 then is consider ratifying and placing on file the August 14th, 2020 invoice list in the amount of $143,993.27. The August 21st, 2020 invoice list in the amount of $411,524.91 in the adjustment list dated August 27th, 2020. So the larger items on the August 14th list were the state of Michigan July pistol permits, $5,792, $9,715 for the July circuit court transmittals, $5,422 for Granger for the monthly compactor service, a new 2020 police interceptor from Crapel Ford for $33,500. And then the Gerald and Joan Hartman Trust, $6,697.97 refund for the homestead property tax credit. $6,477 to Highfields for youth treatment, and then the Great Lakes recovery centers, $8,432. And I hadn't seen Great Lakes on our list before, so I was kind of curious and looked them up. And they have recovery centers all over the Upper Peninsula. So we must have somebody that was court required that's from that area, maybe. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. The August 21st list, then we have the integrated architecture, the July payment of $70,000. Community mental health, our fourth quarter appropriation. Blast Tech LLC, $37,385 to blast and paint the hydropneumatic water tank. And seems like quite a while ago that we approved that, but I was kind of surprised to see it come up now. It seemed like that was quite a while ago, but advanced drainage systems.
I don't think it ever got done.
2 invoices there amounting to about $17,900 for tile inventory. Another police interceptor on this list, and 3 invoices for consumers that amount to approximately $21,000 for the sheriff's office, the jail, the court, and the administration building. And McBride Quality Care, the monthly day treatment contract price of $38,885. And then moving on to the adjustment list, only 2 items on that list, and they were both Gordon Food Service early payment discount items. So any questions on any of that? Hearing and seeing none, then that item will move forward to tonight's agenda.
Okay, next up, consider approving the advance due from monies from the general fund unassigned fund balance to the drain revolving fund to be designated as working capital for a term not longer than 5 years, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. Let's see here. All right, the drain revolving fund, again, they're asking, the drain commissioner is asking, the drain revolving fund has an allocated $267,000 in working capital, which is reimbursed annually with collections from the tax assessment. Let's see the real last. Nicole, I don't have in front of me. Are we asking for $150,000 more. That was my understanding. Is that correct or incorrect?
That is correct. The original request asked for a transfer of
Mm-hmm.
$150,000 from the general fund balance to the drain funds for working capital for their revolving fund.
Okay.
Because their costs have increased, they need more working capital to be able to do the work. But in committee, what we actually came to understand from the drain commissioner is that his need might just be right now, maybe not so much a longer term need. And so instead of transferring the monies, which would never be intended to be paid back, it was agreed to in committee to advance the monies through a due to, due from, so that they would be paid back to the general fund after a certain amount of time from the drain revolving fund. Drain Commissioner Bob Willoughby may be on this Zoom. I know traditionally he does call in, and we do have a caller that is right now unidentified.
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent.
Again, in asking for this, I know I've had a couple instances in my district where some projects wanted to be done and we were told that there was not enough money in the funding as far as some maintenance and that goes. I don't know if any other commissioners have had that in their districts. So again, this involves some control over it with the county commissioner, county commission, but still also helps the drain commissioner in the daily operating costs. So this is pretty much what this is. Commissioner Angler.
Yeah, what is the cap right now currently?
I believe it's 267.
So is that what it currently is after
Yeah,
the last year increase of 150? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And you know, construction costs and pipe and everything has, you know, went up a lot just since I've been here, and it's went up a lot in the last 15 years. Rick got got it increased back when he first started, so it was increased back in I think 2004 or 5, something like that. And as I say, the costs just keep going up and up and up.
Mr. Willoughby, sorry, go ahead.
No, the cost, of course, and the regulations to do a project keeps pushing those costs up on every drain project. So, yeah, I'm surprised it hasn't increased since then. So.
Yeah, and then this increased rain we're getting, and you know, we're actually getting more problems with, you know, with the flood caused things, and some of those issues didn't show up for a year or two. And yeah, my maintenance guys have been very busy.
Chairman Green.
Bob, the other day when I was over there to the Commission on Aging, and we talked about the crossings that were going on Apex out there. And you mentioned to me that was a $250 bill, I believe, for every drain they crossed. And I believe for quite a few drains. Do you remember the number?
They're not all 250. The bit larger ones cost more. Just the boring underneath of them and the driveway crossings were like 250 just for a permit. But anything that required any engineering was 500, 750, 1,000. Went up in $250 increments. You know, depending on the cost of what they had to do.
Does that money stay with the drain, or can that go into this drain fund? I guess I didn't ask that question.
No, that money, well, basically it stays with the drain. Every drain has its own bank account.
Yeah.
And then we have to pay, Spicer Engineering is working on all those resolutions for every single, and they're up to 170 of them, I believe, right now. And they're working with me on every one of them. And it's a godsend that they actually did that, because I don't know if I'd have time to do all of it myself.
But there's 170 crossings. It could be a minimum of 250.
Minimum of 250, yes.
And then it goes up by 250 increments. So that money that stays with each drain that it's on for later repair or whatever it needs.
Yep. Well, and then it pays Spicer for the process of doing it too.
Right. Thank you.
Any other commissioners have any questions? Mr. Willoughby, I just have one quick question before we're done with this. What is your, right now, we're looking at not being behind or it's causing delays in maintenance. Where are you at right now where are you in your office at with maintenance backlogs? Is there a backlog? How far out are you?
No, we're not really at a backlog right now. You know, that I give my people, but Derek Starr does most of it for me. I do have other contractors that do some of it. They come in and get, 6 or 8 or 10 of the slips, maintenance slips. And when he gets caught up, he comes and gets some more. Now, he's actually probably caught up pretty good right now, but the problem is we're getting real close to being out of money. So I'm going to have to shut him off here before long.
Okay.
Yep.
Unless this gets approved.
All right. See, any further questions for commissioners? Other than that will move forward to this evening. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Willoughby.
Yep, thank you.
Item number 4 is consider extending the county's agreement with Reman Robson LLC for the 5-year option for the completion of the audits for the 3 years ending September 30th, 2020 through 2024 for the prices detailed in the audit engagement extension letter with fiscal year 2020 not to exceed $40,050 and authorize the board chairman to sign the audit engagement extension as provided. Back in 2017, the county issued an RFP for audit services and Reban Robson was selected. So they've done our audits for the last 3 years. Nicole, did we have a 3-year contract or was that a year-to-year thing at that?
I believe we did have a 3-year engagement with them. As they explain it, each year we have the actual opportunity to sign that engagement letter, but we did have a 3-year understanding with them.
Right, thank you. So then the county asked Reman for a proposed engagement letter extension. And then they came back with proposals for a 3-year and 5-year options. The 3-year option would be a 5.4% increase for the first year, and then 5% increases for years 2 and 3. And then the 5-year option, that first year increase would be only 3%. And then increases for the remaining years would be between 2% and 2.5% yearly increases. So to me, I mean, Reman Robson has worked out really well from what I hear. They understand our processes. And the savings with that 5-year option makes a lot of sense to me. So are there any questions from any of the commissioners?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. So hearing nothing else, that item will move forward to tonight's agenda. And Mr. Chairman, that completes the work of the Finance and Administration Committee.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good job. That moves us on to the Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Our first item for the night is consider approving the Secondary Road Patrol and Traffic Accident Prevention Program application in the amount of $43,356 effective October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. This is something that is real familiar to the board. We get offered state funding through the state police to patrol and enforce the traffic laws on secondary roads throughout the county. And the money that is provided, which is at $43,356, pays a portion of one deputy's salary. It's a service that's needed, and it's great that the state steps in to help us out with it. Any questions or comments?
Just one quick question, Commissioner Jelizinski. Wasn't this at one time in the early budgetary with the state this year? Wasn't that cut originally? And then they put it back in? Is that correct or not correct?
Well, it says in the information that the secondary road received an additional increase of $15,640. And while there's no guarantee that that's going to happen again in the next fiscal year, the sheriff is hoping that it will. So,
Okay.
but it was an increase.
Yeah, I thought at one time when they were putting together the budget though, that they'd taken it out or did something, or either the legislature or the governor did. I can't remember who did what. Maybe I'm misinterpreting it on something else, but I'm glad. Yeah, that's certainly something the county needs for sure. So
I think there was some discussion about some changes in the state budget, and that was one of the targets, but it didn't materialize.
Okay.
If no other, Sheriff Mean, would you like to comment?
Yeah, real quick. So I apologize for not making the work session. We were actually out of town. I had a reminder on my phone. It didn't go off. I did listen to it. I know there was some questions, and I'm sorry I wasn't there to answer them in regards to the funding. So last year, this has been a big topic with the Sheriff's Association and all 83 sheriffs across the state of Michigan, because this is something that was legislatively put in place, and it's been cut over and over and over. What we hear is that there's not enough tickets being written to offset the cost, so they keep cutting our costs, which is a fight on our end because there's some issues there. So in the work session, you guys were correct. We did get a disbursement that we weren't really expecting, and we are at about 70,000 right now. However, we are still billing for the remainder, so that will end up being around 80,000 that we'll collect hopefully at the end of this last quarter. So that money will come in. It's just they do that in quarters and phases. We have to send in reports and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, we received an email just a couple hours ago, and I've already fired back an email to our executive director at MSA in regards to this. Right now, they're $2 million lower than about 25% compared to this time last year, and they're looking at what state budget will do for that. My email back was, well, and hopefully they're taking into account that for the first quarter or so, or even more. We had a lot less traffic stops due to COVID because we were trying not to expose our folks and everything else. We've kind of changed that. Now we're making lots of stops and so forth. But there are a lot of sheriffs. If you remember this time last year, we were about 45% workforce due to some changes that you folks made for us. We have changed that. And our secondary road patrol guy, he is out working diligently, and he takes most of our accidents. We have him through we look at the stats. We put him on the days that it's the most busy for accidents and traffic. So our stuff's coming up, but there are a lot of sheriff's offices across the state, especially in the northern part, that are at critical levels. I had a sheriff send me something today that he's down to 6 deputies. I mean, he said he's at critical status right now. So yeah, we're not going to be out working traffic when you have 6 deputies on the road. You're just trying to keep your head above water. So that's going to be a fight that MSA continues to fight on behalf of the sheriffs and that legislatively assigned money. So all in all, it's obviously we want to get the money. We do have somebody in that assignment, and they do a good job for us. And they spend a lot of time in the rural areas, but it's just one car, and they're turning the tires every single day. So,
Thank you, Sheriff Mean. Chairman Green, did you have something else?
No, it was answered there, and Commissioner Horton. Well, thank you.
Great. Any other comments, concerns? Commissioner Sweeney?
Yeah, a question for Sheriff Main. It seems like this year we've had quite a few severe accidents in the outer counties, resulting in several deaths. I don't know if it's up, so I don't know the numbers, but it seems like a good time to hear what we're doing for accident prevention out there.
So the fatalities aren't necessarily up right now, but we're not really into the busy season. You're right. We are seeing an increase in accidents. It's interesting. The last few days have been just crazy. We've had lots of crashes, lots of issues. This last week we had 391 incidents, booked in about 41 people into the jail for new intake. And I think we had about 22 crashes. That was just the sheriff's office. So we are running solid. Thank God we have full crews on, and they're doing a good job. But they are out there, they're making stops and they are writing some tickets. Our ticket count, I think Nicole had mentioned that our ticket numbers were up, and that's because we're no longer at 45% capacity of our workforce. So whether that's going to help offset that, it's as we know, it's been a very bizarre year. We're having some very odd issues going on right now with mental health and alcohol and even some drug stuff. And so we're just, it'll be interesting to see what the numbers are next year or at the end of the year, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Anybody else? We'll move this forward into tonight's regular meeting.
Okay, item number 2, consider approving Brian and Deborah Bogue's farmland agreement application and instruct the Isabella County Clerk to forward the application to the MBA Farmland and Open Space Program. Seen these before, pretty standard. It falls under, that's 38.41 acres. So falls between the 5 and 40. It's a 10-year agreement with one exception on it, but everything seems to be in order. So we've seen these before. So I will take any questions. Seeing, Jerry, yes.
I was just going to say, I did read that the Planning Commission did recommend approval, but I was also at the Lincoln Township meeting when this was brought up for discussion. And Lincoln Township indicated they were going to provide a letter of support for that farmland agreement too.
Okay. Any more questions? Seeing none, I will move this forward to tonight's meeting.
Mr. Chairman, that does complete the work of the Criminal Justice and County Affairs Committee.
Thank you very much. Good job, gentlemen. That brings us down to the Human Resource and Public Works Committee. Gentlemen, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first item is consider approving the FY 2021 grant application between Michigan Department of Military and Veteran Affairs, Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, and Isabella County in the amount of $52,350 for enhanced veteran services operations. And I see Ian Welch, our person, is on here tonight. Could you get into this a little more, please, Ian?
Yes, thanks for having me. We've done the grant in the past. It's been pretty successful in the county. Used it for advertising. We did back in 2018, the first grant year, we did an advertising. My brain just stopped working. Sorry. We had a company that did an advertising campaign for us. We've been utilizing that ever since. It's worked pretty well. This is more doing that. We're going to run 10 ICTC buses, which we're doing this year already. We're going to continue that, save some money going forward. ICTC bus advertising has done pretty well. I've had a few people mention it. We're going to do a billboard this year. I'd like to expand on that if the state gives us more per cap. We won't know until they calculate their budget. This is just the application. This is not the actual contract. Obviously, that'll have to come back from the state of Michigan. There was a deadline of today, so we actually already submitted that application last week, so we could get that in the deadline. There was kind of a snafu on who can sign and what can sign, and so we figured that out. We'll figure that out next year. When we get the contract back, it'll actually probably mirror everything. I don't think there's anything that's going to be contentious with the state of Michigan. So we'll probably end up doing a budget amendment somewhere along the line if per cap increases. I do have a wish list, which we'll go from there. So any questions for me?
Just real quick, Mr. Welch, I believe the last time you were on, you had a big flood coming in your back door. I think that was you, wasn't it?
Had a what?
Was it you that had the big flood coming in when the dam broke? Was that you? Or I can't remember if that was you or not. So.
Oh no. Well, I live in Elma, and we had some flooding.
Wasn't you?
Yeah,
that wasn't you.
That was in Midland.
Somebody else was confusing you. Sorry about that.
Public defender.
Oh yes, you're right. There you go.
Yeah, I did have some flooding though around my house. I have flood insurance, so my house got flooded pretty bad. Well, I should say surrounding it, but fortunately there was no permanent damage.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, anybody else have any questions for Ian? If no more questions, that's going to be moved to our this evening meeting.
All right, item number 2, consider approving the individual services contract between the Isabella County Commission on Aging and Elizabeth Jane Starr Jetford for services as a registered nurse effective September 2nd, 2020 through September 30th, 2021, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. Of course, this a renew of contracts is required by Region 7 Health Department. Jen Crawford, thanks for coming.
Hi there, how are you? Thank you. Yes, so this position, this contractual position is a requirement for the funding we receive from the Region 7 Area Agency on Aging. And the position of the registered nurse, the responsibilities of that individual would be to review the care plans and the assessments that are done here in-house by our case managers. And so it is very important that we do get that position filled again. We did have one, and unfortunately during the shutdown, the registered nurse that we were working with took a different position and had to leave. So this individual comes with a lot of great experience and expertise, and so we would love to get her on board.
And she basically goes over some materials periodically, right, Jen?
Correct. Yep. As the assessments and intakes come in, she would then, as we get enough, usually it's about 10 to 15 hours a month is what the position would entail. So she would just come in on the time that she can set aside with our coordinator. And then she would review the different case notes and all of the plans that are in place to make sure that we've got all of our I's dotted and T's crossed to make sure we're doing everything that we need to do.
Jim?
Real quick, I believe this is an excellent hire for the county. I've known Ms. Star Gutford for, I believe this is the same Star Jane Gutford that used to work at medical care facility, I believe.
It is.
Known her for a lot of years. She was the DON there for quite a number of years. Excellent person, honest person, straightforward person, friendly person, great with patients. I think this is a real feather for the county to get her to come do this individual services contract. So.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Commissioner Horton. Are there any other questions or statements? Okay, seeing none, we'll move this on to the regular session meeting.
Okay, our next item is consider approving the individual service contracts between Isabella County Commission on Aging and Mary Ellen Welch for the services as caregiver trainer effective October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021, and authorize the board chair to sign the same.
So this position is also another position that we receive funding for from Region 7 Area Agency on Aging through our in-home services program. And this position is amazing. And it is something in our community, we have a lot of caregivers, whether it's someone in the home or another family member. And so what this position does is it provides education and resources and support to those individuals. Mary Ellen Walsh, the one that's in the position, this is just a continuation of the current contract that we do have. She's doing just a wonderful job, has developed such a great rapport with not only our staff, but also those that she's working with in the community. I feel just in the last couple of weeks, I've referred a couple different people to her that have come to me with concerns with family members, and I am so more than comfortable and excited to be able to refer them to her because she does such a great job in her position. So this position is about 15 to 20 hours a week. She's been doing some remote and then also in the office when she can. She does do a monthly support group, which has now been moved to a Zoom format. So she has been doing that online. So we're just, trying to move forward and keep things going as well as we can. But she just does an amazing job. So we would love to be able to keep her on staff with us.
Any comments or questions? If none, then you got one, Mr. Chair? No. Okay. If not, then we'll move to the next item, and this will be put on tonight. Mr. Sweeney?
Yep. Item number 4, consider the individual services contracts between Isabella County Commission on Aging and Steve Wood, James Vandermeer, Catherine Tobin, Judy Schwartz, Angela McGurk, Carol Clute, and Mary Elsinger to provide activity services, and Virginia Kane to serve as acting living newspaper editor effective October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021, with a board direction to provide alternate delivery of all such services when in-person classes can't be performed, and authorize the board and chair to sign the same. All right. Thank you for adding that last part. We'll keep on pushing it down to, provide services any way we can through Zoom or when we can't do it in person. Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, that's right. So we've actually had already prior to submitting this, our current contractors, which all of these we're currently working with right now. Our fitness classes are already online. We're doing Zoom with those. So both Tai Chi, that's been going really well. We actually started with that. Our chair yoga, and then Zumba. Zumba we were excited about. We actually, one of our instructors that we had for that, Judy Swartz, she'd actually moved away to Colorado last year, and she just was an instructor that everybody just loved, and we were so sad to see her move, but she was going with family, so it was a great thing. But through all of this, you know, you learn things that you can do better, and we were actually able to bring her back because she's been doing Zumba classes for us and for our participants, and so we've been able to you know, reintroduce them and with her, and so that's been really fun for the participants to be able to do that. You know, 2 of our fitness classes are at CMU in the pool. So we have water aerobics and aqua Zumba. So for those 2 classes, you know, we do have to wait for CMU to open the pool to be able to do actual pool activities, to do the swimming portion. But the rest, yoga was just new. We actually have just gotten with our yoga instructor, and that is going to Zoom starting, I believe, next week. So then all of our fitness classes, with the exception of the pool classes, are online. Our Tai Chi class, actually, he held one in the park. And that went really well. People enjoyed that, and they were able to social distance and do it safely. So we're trying to find different ways that we can get people involved. They want to see each other. They want to talk to each other, and try to do it safely. So we started with our activities program. This is all through activities. She started doing some root beer float drive through root beer floats, just to try to get people to be able to get out, and we can see them too, which is fun for us. But trying to do it in a safe way until we can get them in here, which we're excited to be able to do that.
Yeah, it'll be great when we can do these things in person, and then it's going to be a long time before we can do Aqua Zoom online.
Yeah, yeah, that one might be tough.
Are there any
Absolutely.
questions? Any questions from commissioners? All right, hearing none, we'll move this on to the regular session tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jen. Okay, our last item is considering adopting Isabella County Board of Commissioners Resolution number 20-09-02, Essential Workers Resolution, and authorize the board chair to sign the same. I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Sweeney since he brought this forward.
All right, I'll read the resolution and address it real quickly. Essential Workers Resolution. Whereas the coronavirus has made many sick, put many into hospitals, and led to the deaths of over 160,000 in this nation, and has lasting health effects for many of the survivors. And whereas this pandemic has shown us how much we depend on members of our community to provide us with essential services while putting themselves at higher risk. And whereas their efforts to protect the health of others and themselves have gotten them ridiculed, harassed, physically assaulted, even shot and killed over wearing a face mask in Michigan. And whereas these workers have become sick from COVID-19, been hospitalized, died, or survived and suffered long-term health effects. And whereas many of these essential workers receive minimum wage of $9.65 per hour or $3.67 per hour for those earning tips wages, far less than a living wage, a wage that is considered high enough to maintain a normal standard of living. And whereas our community continues to function because of the contributions of these essential workers, allowing us to self-isolate, thus reducing and preventing the spread of COVID-19. And whereas the sacrifice made by our essential workers continues to save lives during this pandemic, and whereas in 2018, Michigan voters passed the ballot proposal, One Fair Wage law, that called for all workers to receive $12 an hour minimum wage for all workers by 2022, and to offer 1 hour of paid sick time for every 30 hours worked. Therefore, be it resolved on this day, September 1st, 2020, that Isabella County of Commissioners supports paying these essential workers, our neighbors, a wage that is high enough to maintain a normal standard of living. And now, therefore, be it further resolved that copies of the resolution be transmitted to Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Senator Gary Peters, Senator Debbie Stabenow, Representative John Molinar, State Senator Rick Outman, and State Representative Roger Hulk. Now, so there's the resolution. I'd like to just address probably a couple of questions. One being how essential workers are being, how that definition is. And so I take that definition from the executive order from the governor when we were asked to quarantine in place early in March. And that definition reads as essential workforce includes healthcare workers, home health workers, direct care workers, emergency medical service providers, first responders, law enforcement personnel, sanitation workers, child care workers, including any employees acting as child care workers in essential workforce child care centers, personnel providing correctional services, postal workers, public health employees, key government employees, court personnel, and others providing critical infrastructure to Michiganders. And then it was brought up also to my attention by Commissioner Horton that there are errors made in paragraph 8. You look at the resolution where it says, whereas in 2018 Michigan voters, that was put in this week to address concern by Commissioner Marino at our subcommittee. And I think I just wrote that poorly and passed it on to Jessica, our great admin. So in reality, it was a ballot initiative that never went to a vote. That was a signature ballot initiative that was signed by Michigan registered voters. That was then given to legislature as a choice to either adopt as law or bring it on to the election in 2018. Just give me one sec, Jim, and I'll pass it on to you. And the legislature did bring it into law and then adjusted those wages from enacting in 2022 to 2030, and that was signed by Governor Schneider. And so seeing obviously issues and not wanting to represent falsehoods in the statement, that paragraph would need to be adjusted if this resolution went forward tonight. Sorry, Jim Marino, Commissioner Marino.
Yeah, the initiative was sent to the legislature because it got 350,000 signatures. It was a successful campaign. There was two parts. One was about the $12 an hour for everybody, even people, restaurants and so forth. And the other part was that there would be paid sick time for people that work 30 hours and more for everybody. And the legislature passed, but then they took out the meat of the proposal. And as a matter of fact, they could put it back in too. That's why I was hoping this would be included, because anytime, and there has been attempts by lawmakers to bring the sick pay part in and the $12 an hour part in, but it's never been voted on. It's been in committees. I just thought this was important to put in because the people of Michigan agreed. And the other, and I'm so glad you brought this forward, Steve, because Commissioner Sweeney, because the COVID-19 virus has pointed out just how inadequate some of the workers in Michigan who do life-risking and super essential jobs that prevent the virus from spreading, from being rewarded accordingly.
Thank you, Commissioner Marino. There are certainly many other paragraphs we can discuss, but I'll just let commissioners go ahead Yes, Commissioner Gerald Zinski.
I tend to be a free market economy type of individuals, and I don't think there's any non-essential workers. Everybody adds to the productivity of this country. And there's data to show that as you increase the minimum wage, yeah, there'll be some people that will have an increase in income, but also there's the negative side that as employers try to adjust and maintain profitability and provide their service or good, that there's a reduction in employment opportunity. Minimum wage, I always understood, was to be a starting wage to give people experience, give them skills, and to develop their work ethic to move on to higher paying jobs. We've all gone through minimum wage jobs. And I just think having an artificially set minimum wage doesn't do anybody really a favor. It doesn't do the economy a favor. And so I'm opposed to this resolution.
Commissioner Engler.
Yeah, on the second to last paragraph, where you got a wage that is high enough to maintain a normal standard of living. That's such a subjective term as far as what you're going to determine. Who's going to determine that amount? At least with the $12, you have a set amount in there, but who determines what is normal or is high? Or I just think there's some of this wording needs to be cleaned up a little bit.
Okay.
The other thing I would like to bring up, and I bring this up with my townships a lot. We just got through a budget process where we were basically looking at some tough issues. And I've always maintained whenever I talked with my townships that, I'm going to be dealing with issues that directly affect the county directly. And to get into issues that might divide the board as far as partisan issues, I really don't feel I would like to get into that. We can argue about the budget and stuff, but like I said, we got a number here that you really can't say what it is when you say, high it is. It's kind of like a word like who determines what like is. So I would rather not get into a lot of partisan issues and stick with stuff that direct the county directly. I think this is a state issue, should be fought on state issues. And I don't really, if we pass this one way or another, it probably will have very little effect what happens at the state. Just a personal opinion. And I would rather not get into issues that divide this board along party lines. So just comment there.
Anyone else?
And silence follows.
No, well, I could respond to things, but I thought I'd let all the commissioners comment.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sweeney, if I could.
Please do. Commissioner Horton.
First of all, I'd like to thank Commissioner Sweeney and Commissioner Moreno for bringing this to the board as far as recognizing essential workers. As everyone knows, I'm a pharmacist in my business, and my profession, along with other professions, have been at the forefront all through this COVID. So it's nice to see that board recognition as far as to the essential worker status. So I do thank them for bringing the resolution forward. That being said, I wrote some stuff out. Normally I don't write things out, but I wanted to be clear on a couple things. Usually, first thing was, and there's no specific order, so don't put this in any specific order. I am usually not in support of most resolutions. This is kind of piggyback on what Commissioner Engler just said. I'm usually not in support of most resolutions as they seem to interject a state or federal political aspect into local government. That's why a lot of times I've abstained and or voted no on some resolutions only because of that. I think one of the ones that came before us about a year ago, maybe less, maybe more, I don't know, everything's running together for COVID, with the LGBTQ resolution. I was in favor of that for obvious reasons. I think that would be, I would call that a no-brainer to be in favor of a resolution like that. I think that community and that group has been just treated horribly over the years. So I had no problem with that, bringing that aspect, making an exception to that. But that's one of the reasons I'm not in favor of this resolution, is just I think it brings more of a state and federal political aspect into it. Also, I believe that this resolution, if we were going to do such a resolution, should have been brought earlier, should have been brought back in March, April, or May. Since June, a lot of workers now, going back to Commissioner Jelazinski said, a lot of workers now are back into the workforce, or even our own county employees are now come back and are now back into the workforce. So singling out this group again, I thank everyone for looking at this group, but I think if we were going to do a resolution like that and try to get a, maybe not, I'm not going to use the term living wage, but a bump in salary for anybody, I think that was the time, not now. Looking at the resolution going down, as the specifics of the resolution, paragraphs 1 through 4, I don't have really any problems with. Paragraph 5, I'll discuss in a moment. Paragraph 6 and 7, I'm fine with. And paragraph 10, the last one, so who to send it to, I'm okay with. Commissioner Sweeney mentioned earlier, paragraph 8 is just not a correct statement. That's just wrong. That needs to be cleaned up and actually quote to what the law is, if that's what we're going to bring in as far as one fair wage goes. Paragraph 5 mentions living wage for essential workers. Before I get into that, I also will mention that there was a bill introduced. Senate Bill 5801 was introduced by Representative Cherry earlier in the year. It sits in committee, or however you want to look at it. It's been sitting in committee. It probably won't go anywhere. But he did define essential workers, Steve, just to let you know. And he defined it in that bill as employees whose continued employment during state of emergency necessary for the health, safety, or welfare of the public is determined by the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. So that's another definition. I know your stated Governor Whitmer's definition, but that's also another definition if you wanted to use that. It's probably more legislative than executive. So that might be a better option if you wanted to put that into your resolution. Like I said, it kind of goes on to basically calls out grocery store clerks to food service employees and all that other. Again, getting back to paragraph 5, I'm not opposed to essential workers receiving reimbursement during the time that they were or are performing their job duties. However, just not in a living wage term. In fact, a lot of businesses have adjusted their employees accordingly, either in bonuses or shift premiums. To preface a fair wage aspect into this appears to me to implement early the one fair wage law under the guise of essential workers. Again, it's been, I don't want to use the term hell since March for essential workers, but it truly has been. I think you're right in regards to what some of the essential workers have had to go through, enforcing people wearing masks, showing up for work, not knowing if you're going to get sick, not knowing if you're going to go home and infect your loved ones. It's something we hold, but there's also a lot of employers just in our area that have elevated employee salaries. I believe Myers is still paying a shift premium. I think some of the major pharmacies are. I know we've done stuff with our employees. I'm not going to go into it. And a lot of places, a lot of essential workers are above the minimum, or you call it the living wage or even the minimum wage. And I would be cautious also to state in regards to tipped employees. I think that was a big sticking point when this bill was pushed back. So I would not even go there. Also, in last, again, we talked about no definition of essential workers. We touched upon that. This is another sticking point. Paragraph 9, I agree in part with paragraph 9. It talks about reimbursing essential workers at an elevated pay. But one of the ultimate unfairness, I think, to essential workers, and people have touched upon it. I think one of the biggest things my staff, and I hear about other places, is that the people who were essential workers and did show up for work and did do their job, put their lives and their families at risk, actually receive less than people who were laid off. Getting the $600 a week increase, that's $15 an hour given to people who are unemployed. People who are working, this is the saddest part of all. People who were actually working and putting their lives on the line, many were getting paid way less than those who weren't. And that to me is the ultimate unfairness. So again, I'm not in support of the resolution, probably in most cases, because of the fact that I just don't want to put a state or federal political aspect into it. I do think this board, though, has done the right thing, A, in discussing this matter, and B, in recognizing the fact that no matter what happens, whether it goes, it's voted in, wanted to do it, it's done, redone, essential workers should be acknowledged. Another person too that's got something in the federal, I don't know where it's going to go, probably not going to go anywhere, is Mitt Romney proposed a Patriot Pay aspect of a living wage. I think she's talked about it. Again, though, we're now into September. This started in March. Most people are back. Like I said, looking at our own, what we're responsible for as county employees. They're back. They're working. Many of them don't make $12 an hour. Some of them don't, not many. Some of them don't. And they're still manning the gates. They're still doing park cleanup. They're still doing things like that. So if we were to, like I said, getting back to something earlier, I don't mean to carry this on, is that we should have done this months ago and recognized this months ago, not September, because that's all I have to say on that. Again, I do thank both of you for bringing this matter forward. I do think it was something that needs to be said. So thank you for that as far as recognizing essential workers.
More?
Commissioner Engler, or
Yeah, just real quick to clarify, I agree with, probably about 90% of this I agree with. Like I said, my main problem is doing a statewide. You look at Isabella County, we're weak. You get in the difference between rural Clare County and Wayne County. It's just, there's so much difference in how much it costs to live, and there's difference in the UP. So I really, it's very hard to put one issue for the whole state to make it fair. So that's, it's a hard issue for me to understand. I said I'm a little bit better with numbers, but yeah, I'd rather stick with local issues and deal with within our county and what we do within this county. So enough said.
Okay, I'm just gonna bring out just a couple points. One real quick on the living wage, which is commented as difference between minimum wage in paragraph number 5. Actually, for over a decade now, MIT professor has website calculating living wage for every county in the US. You can go to the website and you can click on it, and it will tell you one person's living wage, 2 people together, living together, living wage with children. It calculates it actually for Isabella County. And if you look at that, it says, I believe, $11.35 for a single person as a living wage, and then you can go from there. So living wage is a very common and calculated thing. That said, I do not have a problem, bouncing between living wage and compensation, although I think that we're in times where this is ongoing, and with, yes, people are back to work, but we're back to work in safe zones where essential workers may not be that case. I know, Jim Marino, you were raising your hand. Commissioner Marino, you're muted. I'm sorry, Commissioner Marino, did you have a comment?
I just don't see this as a partisan issue. I see this as a humanitarian issue. You pointed out, Commissioner Swain, all the sacrifices that these folks have done. I don't think that's a partisan issue. That's crystal clear. And like you also said, that there have been studies on living wage, and it does apply here. And I don't really rule out county commissioners dealing with these kind of issues. I think it's very important for us not to look away from the sacrifices these people have made. So it has nothing to do with partisanship. It has to do with fairness.
I only had 2 more points, and one was I think these resolutions are important for us as a community to show our support. They give direction for MAC for their legislation, and then we're also giving basically, where our support lies for our legislature and our governor. So if we're not in support of essential workers having a living wage that keeps them from having to decide between, medicine or feeding their children, we can tell them that too, to be perfectly blunt. And with that silence, I'll give it back to Commissioner Marino.
Okay, will be moved to our meeting this evening. And that concludes the work of the Human Resources and Public Works Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, gentlemen. Moving on, there's no intergovernmental affairs this afternoon. Nicole didn't have anything in administrative controller issues. We have no unfinished business. Under new business, we have 2 items. One is the holidays for the 2021. I don't know if you folks have a copy of that or not, but it's basically the same, I believe, as last year. And I want to move that to this evening for approval. And then item B is to schedule a public hearing in 2 weeks for the proposed budget, which we always have to do. We have to do this. They've got beginning at 7 o'clock or thereafter as may be heard, which is fine. We usually do it 7:05, but we usually do some things and then come back and all that. So that's good with me. But that'll be brought forth this evening so we can set the public hearing for the next commission meeting. Any questions? Next item, then, don't question those, is general public comment. And Nicole, do we have anybody?
We do not, Mr. Chairman. The only people on the meeting are who you see on the screen. There are some who don't have video, but they're all staff.
So there's no one for. Okay.
Correct.
Moving on, is there any announcements? Nobody for announcements? Item number 12 is closed session. Need a motion to move into closed session. Mr. Marino?
I move that the commission go into closed session.
Support, Sweeney.
Been moved and supported to go into closed session. Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Commissioner Engler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jelazinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Horton,
Yes.
Commissioner Marino,
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeney,
Yes.
Commissioner Hope,
Yes.
Commissioner Green.
Yes.
Full number of votes cast was 7. The ayes received 7. Motion carried.
Thank you. We'll wait till we're in the.
Yep, I'm gonna have to create a breakout room and then you will have to join the room when I assign you to it. You should. Where's your mouse?
Oops.
You there, Jess?
Yes.
Okay, so when I do this, it's not,
So can you take your video off?
I just did. What do you see?
My screen went to something different, but let's see. No, it just says Melissa Franquist.
Yeah, so it's, I don't know what's going on, but let me go ahead and change my name. And dang it. All right.
We're still live, so.
So
let me
when
see.
she comes in, board is in closed session is okay.
Yes, so.
I can't hear Nicole. Can you hear me, Nicole? Okay, I'm just gonna have to change my name. Can you hear me, Nicole? Now, what do you see?
The same screen I did before, but let me see what comes on Zoom. Oh, there you go. There we go. You're good.
Yeah.
You're good.
Are they still in closed session? Okay.
I can see Melissa, Jerry, and Nicole, but I can't hear Nicole.
No. Unmute chairman. Now you can hear me.
There you go.
Okay, I still feel like.
I've never done one of these on my phone.
You're out. Adjourn again.
Can you hear chairman?
Can you hear us?
Yes, I got you.
Need another motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn Horton.
Is there support?
Support, Engler.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Please
See you in
don't
a few minutes.
join the regular meeting at 7. We'll see you soon.
I can leave, right? I'm gone.
You can leave, but don't forget to come back.
Yeah, come back,
So
Mr.
we're
Morton.
gonna have you leave.